Welcome everyone, I'm Josh St. John, Head of Creators for Z by HP. We're excited to be back at MAX as sponsors this year and bring you this session in partnership with Framestore and Adobe. For over 30 years, Z by HP has been equipping creators with high-performance desktops, laptops, displays, and solutions. And the evidence of this is all around us. From the shoes that we wear, to the cars that we drive, to the movies and shows we enjoy. Z by HP exists to deliver experiences that help unlock the creative human potential. That's only possible because of all of you. So thank you. In our new campaign, Power Your Breakthrough, we wanted to explore how trends like 3D and AI were unlocking creative evolutions. We wanted to follow our insight that the creator never stops evolving, and that our job at Z is to equip you on that journey. Like most campaigns, it started with a pitch, and when we got the pitch from Framestore, we knew we found the right partners for the project. We saw in directors Anthony Gibbs and Chris Eckhart the visionaries that could help us craft and tell our story. As ZBook users themselves, they brought the same excitement that they have for the project to the execution. You see, not only is Framestore an Oscar award-winning VFX studio and production partner, but they're also a longtime customer of Z. So the selection process was actually quite straightforward. But I think that might have been the only straightforward thing about the project. Like most of our intentions for 2020, things didn't quite go off as planned. We intended on doing a live action shoot. We planned on doing behind the scenes. We wanted to do industry events and breakouts and keynotes with all of you in person. But lately, our production environments have tended to look a lot more like this. But no matter, we're creators. So we do what we do, and we get creative. And on that, I'll let the work speak for itself. Turn it over to Chris and Anthony to tell you the story of Power Your Breakthrough. And I hope that all of you will let Z by HP have the opportunity to power yours.
Hello, my name's Anthony Gibbs and I'm here with my Framestore directing partner Chris Eckhart to talk about the creativity and process that went into making Grow Beyond for Z by HP. And also take a unique look at the role of a director. But before we go too far, I'd like to say a huge thank you for everyone attending this session virtually. If you have any questions, please use the chat pod and we'll endeavour to answer as quickly as possible. Now, this project is really about us as creative people. All the trials and tribulations we go through as we strive for perfection. All the iterative paths we walk whilst we find our way, and all the tools that ultimately help us get there. So it seems so fitting we're getting to share this with you, fellow directors and artists, as you can relate. All these steps and missteps and iterations, I feel like there's something we really need to embrace and certainly not fear, as without them, we wouldn't be creating our most interesting and captivating work. But so that you get a bit of understanding first, I think it's important to talk about the brief. So I'm going to pass you over to Chris.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm Chris Eckhart. The initial brief came through our partners at the creative agency Giant Spoon, through which they asked Framestore's ability to nail photorealistic environments such as tree or wave, but give them a creative twist to showcase the power of 2D and 3D rendering. The intention of these spots was to bring to life how Z equips creators with high-performance technology and is designed for the creative workflow. As a real customer of Z across our studios, not only were we a production partner on this project, but we were also their target audience. As Anthony mentioned, the campaign was aimed at the creator, supporting them on their journey to embrace change and to go after their next big creative breakthrough. Originally, the spot was live action to showcase an artist studio. A week before COVID hit, we were fully prepared to shoot with talent selected, location picked, and props and art direction ready to go, including storyboard and previs. Then mandatory lockdown hit, and it was time for a new approach. Our process for this treatment was pretty straightforward, similar to what we do for other treatments, except for this one, it was just this level of excitement and energy to the point that we felt like we spent more time reluctantly pulling out ideas that we wanted to implement in because there was just such a rush of creative thought. I mean, it's somewhat unheard of to have an opportunity for a client to just kind of let loose, we pushing us to be as much as creative as we possibly could. And letting them dial us back. I mean, they just kept on actually pushing more. So it was a lot of fun, but it's also a bit frustrating because you realize, that you actually had to pare it down. So with this process, we went through and we found references, we had illustrations, we had our artists that we would use quite a bit to visualize some of these thoughts that we had and created beautiful drawings and 3D illustrations for our treatment. On top of that, we actually took some of these and storyboards and started to put them into a Boardomatic to understand timing. The other thing we also did within our project is to just set a kind of an overall mood board to put that to music and to get a sense of motivation within the project and growth within the piece, just to get everybody in the right frame of mind. These are kind of important steps to make sure that yourself or your client understands your point of view. You need to get them into that emotion, that feeling of what you're trying to say with your thoughts and your creativity. The tree is a perfect metaphor of the creative process, of how we develop ideas. One idea takes shape. It starts growing from one thought, and it can spawn onto many other thoughts. I mean, we have a tendency to get distracted like a lot of artists do, and we go off on different tangents, but sometimes and somehow it comes back around, or it just keeps on again, just growing from one idea, but it always starts from one point, like a seed, and then it grows. And that was kind of our approach here with this tree and how it could develop into this beautiful idea. And within Anthony and I, when we started to develop our treatment, it really started out with the foundation of our sketches. So utilizing our thoughts and our references that we started to source, we created a kind of a mind map, a way of visualizing where we want to take our creative process. With this and our references and using some very experienced colleagues and their tools as artists to be able to start illustrating our thoughts on paper, it helped us in starting to push forward into the direction that we wanted.
Like most creative thoughts, it's only when you put pencil to paper that you really see your ideas grow and flourish. And this is the most exciting part of the project for us, because we're getting to collaborate with different artists, designers, and see their perspectives. And a lot of great ideas can come out of that. You just have to listen. And let these voices sing, and your job is to really make them sing in harmony. At this conceptual stage, it's important to keep an open mind, so stay loose, broad strokes, and see your picture build up organically. And that's how I was always taught in college, basically. And it's only once you've got that stage down and you've got your broad strokes and pencil sketches done that you can start to layer in detail and colour and start to consider lighting. And that's how your image will start to build. In terms of finding good reference to help us build our ideas and help us visualise the world that we wanted to create, we really looked at nature as our inspiration. I mean, nature inspires all different types of artists, whether musicians, fashion designers, painters. But it really made sense for us because we were creating something so organic. And with the tree being the centerpiece of the campaign, it was so important that we really considered what tree we wanted to reference. A tree that spoke to us pretty much instantly was the bonsai tree, because we wanted the journey to show all the winding ways and paths you have to take before reaching your creative destination. And the bonsai tree really has all those twists and turns and so much texture in its bark. And of course we did take some creative liberties with making the foliage, even more lush, and we added like lots of extra textures in the moss just to make it more interesting. But really, it provided the perfect muse. The design process was actually relatively simple, probably a process that many of you artists go through yourselves when layering and building an image. But just because it's simple, that's not to say it's easy. We had a large talented team helping us create these spots. So when we had all these pencil sketches and we scanned them in and we began layering in Photoshop, once that part of the process was done, we then segued into 3D and began building the model in Maya, looking at different camera angles and different shapes within the tree's form. Once we were happy, we could then start really pushing and pulling, adding crevices and sculpting in details in ZBrush. All these extra crevices and nooks and crannies that we created gave us even more scope to add more elements. We began adding epiphytes and moss, which just added more visual interest. But just because you're throwing a lot of elements in, that doesn't necessarily give you a great looking result. It's all about the lighting. And for a long time, Chris and I talked about having light piercing through the canopy of the bonsai tree and landing on some of these elements beautifully so that they almost illuminate in kind of a subsurface way. But the lighting wasn't just there to make things look good. The lighting would tell a story. The story of the artist, the story that shows us not just working an hour, not just working 3 hours, waking up every morning, working into the evening, sometimes the night, and sometimes the small hours of the next day. And so to show this story of hard work and dedication, we wanted to have the lighting evolve from a more cool daylight to something just a bit warmer in the evening when we arrive at our beautiful desert scene. And all these things we were really trying to balance. And it's kind of funny, we were able to work so quickly and render so fast, and our artists could work nimbly because the tools worked well. We were just limited by our own imaginations. And so that added actually quite a bit of pressure to dream the dreams and imagine something incredible and beautiful. Although Chris and I come from slightly different artistic backgrounds, we actually have fairly similar design tastes, and we have the experience to identify what it is about an image that makes it special. With the same philosophies and principles in creativity, we're able to communicate to the artists with one voice, which, as you can imagine, is incredibly important. Otherwise, everyone would be moving in different directions, not getting to the place where we want to be. And with the challenges of not shooting, we definitely had to rely more on CG to create our shots. And CG is fantastic. You can create pretty much whatever you want, but it can open up Pandora's box just a little bit wider. Just because you have all these possibilities, it doesn't mean you have limitless time. And that was something that Chris and I were very aware of. But also, in being able to create whatever you want, whether that's photoreal or abstract, that doesn't actually mean you're communicating your message in the same way. We wanted to add a humanistic feel to the films, so that we're not just making pixels, we're making art, something that's more memorable and stays with the audience just a bit longer.
Every creative is a problem solver. With a combination of Anthony's experience in design and my knowledge in cinematography, we can approach a variety of different problems and have a good level of confidence that we can manage them and figure out a strong solution. However, certain things are out of anyone's control. I mean, COVID, it just created a lot of different challenges that were new to anyone that we had to figure out how to overcome. One of the main issues is having a team, to completely work remotely. I mean, this is something new for a lot of us, let alone to try to direct a commercial completely remotely with artists in a variety of different locations. but utilizing specific hardware and software assisted us in overcoming some of these challenges. One, for instance, was HP Z-Central Remote Boost software. It allowed our editors to be able to kind of remotely tap in, connect to pretty powerful PC workstations in the studio, so that they can continue to work with a very strong compute-intensive approach. So to them, even though they were relaxing and sitting at their home doing this, which probably they enjoyed more so, there wasn't really a difference from when they were in the office working on the systems. They were connected. This just allowed them to pivot from working in person versus working remotely much quicker, utilizing these kind of tool sets. One of the things that we really had to kind of change and figure out because of working remotely was just the simple fact of communication. It's something that we had to get used to. We were no longer in a situation that we could walk to artist stations and sit, right next to them or look over their shoulder and have that sense of communication, that connection that you usually did. Now we were all connected through video links, emails, chats. In certain ways, it's almost like you were more connected because you instantaneously were right there at that artist. So in certain ways it's good, and I think in other ways it was bad. But one thing that we noticed that it did do was it opened up for actually more iterations. And again, that's a good thing because you're able to evolve and really develop a project more. But at the same time, for the artist, they needed to have the flexibility to push their ideas and get things, renders and ideas through faster. This is where the HP Z workstations came in handy because of the speed and the power that they had accessible to them. They're able to iterate and manage, directors, pushing them to see what's next, what's new. Can we change this? Can we change that? I mean, I think that's a good thing, but maybe not for the artists, but for the directors, it was. What was really important to make these jobs work were the tools that were available to us. It wasn't just the hardware. I mean, the hardware was so crucial, especially in a situation that we're all working remotely, and having that access to be able to log into a given station or stations to work with that power and to render with that power. But it's also the software that we're utilizing. I mean, we really had a huge gamut of tools to make these projects work. I mean, software-wise, felt like we were just using every single Adobe suite that could imagine. But of course, the main tool, to be honest, was of course our Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, Premiere. These are kind of the main suite Adobe tools that we were consistently using. And of course, we rolled into Substance for our texture painting, especially on specific aspects within the tree or the butterfly or the flowers and so forth. But Photoshop and Illustrator were definitely used more in the front end. We had all those beautiful illustrations of our trees, our different iterations of the tree, flowers, butterfly that we were kind of sketching out. Those weren't just something that was purposely done for the commercial, for fluff. Those were actually our illustrations that we used to kind of hash out what this spot was going to look like. Then it just fit well to put it right into the spot. But those were, started out pencil and paper traditionally, and then brought into Photoshop and redeveloped and worked out and lined out within there. And then also same with Illustrator, then utilizing After Effects to actually multiplane, putting those illustrations on different layers so then we can animate past camera and see that sense of depth. It was really important for Anthony and I to have that. We didn't want to just have all these illustrations sitting on a flat plane. We wanted to see the layers that it would create, not just in the amount of work that had been put through and seeing how all this we had done, but also just how it came together. And we just felt visually it was really pretty to see these overlays of illustrations on top of one another as they passed by. Other tools that we had in our arsenal, we had our 3D tools. We, dealing with Maya and C4D and Houdini, and those were kind of the standards. I mean, they're all of these tools across the board are so amazing to utilize, including, of course, ZBrush to help do some of our initial sculpting on the tree. Substance really, it's such a powerful tool to be able to work out your ideas. A lot of us traditionally, we would, and still to a certain point, we still work with Photoshop quite a bit, dealing with texture painting. But with the flexibility and the speed in which Substance can give us, we just naturally navigate in that direction. And again, it helped quite a bit in development here with the project. I would say one of the important things with Substance on many projects, but especially with our Grow Beyond project, was assisting us in time. You're able to get in there and visualize an idea much faster utilizing Substance Painter, because we could go in there and paint up an idea and see how it would look, and not just see it flat and then go through the pipe of taking that texture, then getting it wrapped onto your object, then lighting it out. You're able to actually see this all within that workspace of Substance and understand if it's working or not and make those changes. So as a creative, I'm able to work with the artist and make these judgments, these decisions faster and more efficiently, just because of how the tool is designed. And I think that's a benefit to it, and that was a very helpful approach in trying to develop a look and feel for these spots. We know and understand this might be a lot to take in all at once, so this is just a reminder that our chat pods are there to help with any questions. So please submit your questions to the chat pods and we will do our best to answer them.
Now that we've given you approximately 20 minutes worth of context, we're very excited to show you the finished film, Leap into 3D. And perhaps it will give you some inspiration or some insight into creating your own CG project.
This is not a tree. It's every milestone and misstep that's led you here. Your time to branch out beyond 2 dimensions and leap into 3D with the computing power of Z. It's one breakthrough that unlocks 1,000 more. This is not a tree. It's the next era of your creativity. Z by HP.
So as you can see, with the right tools, creativity is never held back. They cut through the weeds that stifle progress. That's why I love the metaphor of a seed being the growth of an idea, because we know that not every path or branch will lead to the creative fruit that we're looking for. And that's why it's just so important that as creatives, we keep exploring till we reach our goal. So now it's time for me to say some thank yous. Thank you, Jake Cudahy, for your Photoshop wizardry and pencil sketches. Thank you, Craig Stouffer, for your wonderful concepts and ZBrush sculpts. And thank you, Future Deluxe, for your motion and bringing our vision to life. And a huge thank you to Giant Spoon for coming to us with such a creative brief. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.